Hello everyone, it is I, your supreme ruler of the universe, Mr. Pwnsalot. Ha! On Final Fantasy XI. I'm actually recording this for my YouTube channel, Mr. Overgriff, for Pwn TV. And basically, this is Pwnsalot, the one and only Pwnsalot, that is going to actually be the star of this episode. I'm going to take you on a mystical journey, for a few minutes anyway, and I mean a few, not a whole lot. Mystical journey, guys, of macros and how macros actually work. So if you're new to the channel, basically I talk about shit you should already know. If you don't already know it, that's probably because you're also new to the game and I'm trying to help you out. If you're not new to the game and you don't know it, well, I'm basically teaching you something new. Yay, because every one of us has something to learn in this game, right? Now, if you're actually macro savvy with this game, then you'll probably find this video interesting, but for the most part I'm going to show a whole bunch of examples that I've used over the years with the macro palette, and I'll explain why I used these particular macros and how they actually changed over time, right? Things like that, a small history lesson. So let's get into it. I have a few macro palettes picked out that I want to talk about. So right now I'm going to be on my thief, alright, on my thief, and basically this is going to be a macro palette that is just an official vanilla macro palette. If you use Final Fantasy XI and you don't use any add-ons, any window or any Gearswap, anything like that, then you're going to have to write macros in this way, where basically you use an equip set command followed by a wait of 1 second, usually almost always 1 second, maybe 2 depending on lag. You have to test these things, right? And then after that you make another command on another line with an ability that you want to use and the target of that ability. For example, conspirator targets myself, so I have to say target me after I write conspirator. And then of course another wait tag at the end, followed by another equip set that I've got put together that actually goes back into an idle set of gear. So basically the way that this works is I press the button and it says, okay, switch into my conspirator gear, and then use conspirator on myself, and then go back to my idle set. Okay, that's great. That's great. It's fine. Well, depending on what you're doing, maybe you would rather be in a different set of gear. So then this last part could be a different set of gear. So if you're using this in the vanilla shell, you're probably going to be like, okay, well, what do I put in this last line? Do I put my idle set or my engaged set? Well, see, you're not using Gearswap, so you have to actually decide which one are you going to be in more often, your idle set or your engaged set. And then you'd put that here, and then you just have to remember that you put that here, so another macro would actually switch you into your idle set or your engaged set, whatever the case may be, and then you could actually play the game vanilla and probably outparse everyone if you do it right. If you know what set of gear you have on at all stages of the game, and you know what you're switching into every time you press a macro, because you design the macros to do these sorts of things, then you'll probably outparse everyone that uses Gearswap to play the game for them anyway. So you could win the parse if you play vanilla. Don't be thinking that, you know, you have to actually use add-ons to get good at this game, because that's not the case. This is a pretty decent macro palette right here, and all of it's vanilla. So this is just gonna, and just a really quick thing, I'll show you the equip set 94 and 13. I think that they're still accurate. I don't know. Let's see. 13. Okay, so 13's right here. Yep, so I would be going into a set of gear that would be like medium range accuracy, and that's kind of what I've got here. But, you know, yours is obviously going to look different. And then what was the other one on that macro? 90 something? 94 for conspirator. Okay, so let's go look at conspirator then. Okay, 94 is right here. Yep, so this is the JSC I'm putting on my conspirator stuff, and you can see that this indeed is augments conspirator. I use it for multiple things, but it at least puts on the gear that actually augments conspirator, which is what I want, and so that's why that's like that. So I'm kind of using, I mean, I use every equip set, guys. Every equip set that they gave me has something in it. There's nothing blank, you guys. So I have to use the same equip set for multiple stuff. So this is a lock style and also a functional macro, right? So that's just a side note. I've got a lot of jobs I play and a lot of macros for this game, so yeah, so that kind of explains that a little bit. But back to the macros. So you get the idea. So basically you write the equip set, or you actually just do the simple thing in the equip set is you actually just use current, and whatever you have actually on your character will actually save to that slot. So you could simply do that. You just hit use current, it will overwrite what's there and put the new stuff in, and so whatever you're actually equipped at the moment will actually get sent into that slot, and you'll always put that stuff back on when you go to this macro and you press this button, because it says equip that equip set, and then use the JA at the end. You have to be careful, guys, with rings in particular and earrings in particular. When you use any sort of gear changing, whether it be Gearswap or equip sets, it works. It's a built-in problem with this game that cannot be corrected. You have to be careful that you don't move one of your earrings to the other slot in one of your equip sets, but in all of your other ones it's the other way around, because depending on which earring or which ring is in the left or the right slot, depending on the circumstance, there's a chance that will always happen. If it meets this layout specifically, it will always glitch on you and not put that earring or that ring in the other slot. It works one way only, so like I think it's like left to right, where it depends on what's in your right slot, but I don't really know exactly. I could test it again really quick, but the idea basically is like when the game goes to the equip set and it tries to move, like, let's just use this as an example, when it tries to move like this Thurius earring from the left slot to the right slot, and the brutal earring to the left slot, and maybe the assuage from the right off of the character, like maybe I'm cycling between these three, for example. Well, if it tries to move one direction in one macro, but in the other macro equip set it tries to move it the other direction, it'll get hung up when it actually makes that change. So just to eliminate that problem completely, you just need to make sure that all of your equip sets have the same earring on the same side every single time, and they never move them to the other side. So whichever side you want to pick, that's the earring that's the ear slot you always use with that particular earring every time. And for rings, the same exact thing. This is the ring that you would use in left ring, only left ring. You would never put this ring in the right ring. That sort of thing. And you just decide what that's going to be and make all of your equip sets in that way, and hopefully you don't have any difficulty, because sometimes I've noticed I get a little tricked out where I can't make the change because I'm using the same best of three choices, and one of them is always in the right, but in this certain macro I need it to be on the left, and there's no way to put it on the right because there's another really good one that's always on the right that's on my character at the moment, and I just can't move it to the left because I have the same problem. So if you have two of those earrings or two of those rings that are, I mean, you've already decided you always want them on the right side, well, if they're both equipped at the same time, they can't both be in the right slot. So that is a problem. But that's very rare that will be you. That'll be a problem that you run into, but it has happened to me before. But again, you should stick to that method of actually moving the earrings and the rings around. It will save you the headache of thinking you have, like, say, a defending ring on your ring slot when you don't have a defending ring. Like, what happens if you hit your defending macro and you try to put your defending ring on, but you goofed and it tried to put it in the wrong slot and it couldn't because it was putting something else in that slot currently, and the defending ring was in another slot. So then when it got to the other slot, it takes the defending ring off, puts the new stuff in that slot, and it doesn't go back to check that the other slot is missing a defending ring. It was already equipped when you run the macro in the wrong slot, and so like now when you get to the slot that you're moving it out and deleting it and putting another ring there, then it's just suddenly it's not on your character anymore, and you think it is because you hit the button to put it on your character, and it would have worked if it wasn't already equipped, but because it was equipped when you hit the button in the wrong slot, now suddenly it can't get equipped to the right slot. That's always going to be the case if you do it the correct way. I've actually shown this before in a video where I can make an item disappear. You should check my channel and look for make defending ring disappear or something like that, I think is what it's called, and I demonstrate how that's actually done in the correct order. But I've just remembered the simple concept of making sure that all of my defending rings are on my left side and all of my non-defending rings are on, you know, you get the idea, right? just pick a side for every item that you have on these 4 spots in particular. Since they can go in any one of 2 slots, they will glitch out if you put them in the wrong slot at the wrong time, I guess. All right, so let's get back on track. All right, so that was a really big explanation about how the equip set works and how maybe a gear swap would actually screw up your character just the same because you're moving the items to the wrong slots at the wrong times. And so to avoid that, simply make sure that they're on the same side every time in all of your equip sets, A, or B, you can actually hard code it here, like, oops, in the equip set itself, you could actually hard code after you run the equip set, you could actually hard code that you want the defending ring on the left side, like what would it be, like left ring, defending ring. All right, so you could do that, and so when you actually ran this macro, now like the last line will execute, and I'll actually run it really quick so you can see the idea. So I can't use the command here. Okay, so I was in the menu, so I need to get out of the menu. So obviously I don't have that on. I can't use the JA. Okay, L ring didn't work, so maybe it's actually a dot. It might be a dot. Like a dot between L and ring. I think it is. I think it's a dot, or it's an L1 and an L2. I think either one of those will work. So let's try it this way. See if it actually works with the dot. Okay, equipment did get changed. Alright, so if you did that afterward, then your defending ring would obviously be on because you ran 2 different lines in your macro to do it. So the second line would catch the first line's mistake if you ran into that situation. So those are the only 2 ways that I know how to avoid that equip change situation that you could encounter where you accidentally take your defending ring off of your character instead of putting it on because of the set of gear you had on previously. It was in the wrong slot, so then it got bumped. When you actually ran the 3rd line of this code, it would get bumped. Instead of actually getting put on, it's getting taken off, and it can't get put on while it's already on. That's the idea, because you're moving 1 spot at a time when you make the equip set. The computer actually moves 1 spot at a time and changes the gear, but it has to check to see if the gear is not in use before it can put it in that slot. So if it goes to the 1 ring box and it's like, put the defending ring here, well, the defending ring is in use on your other slot, so it can't make that change in one direction, but in the other direction it can because of the algorithm that it uses. So that's just a little interesting note that I discovered. And this is the solution. If you do this and you know that it's going to be a problem, you could just simply hard code after the equip set line, and then it will actually run the equip set line. It will actually do its thing whether it takes the item off or not, and then in this line it will simply put the item on if it's not already on. Okay, so we're assuming this line had taken it off by accident. Now it's actually getting put back on in this line. Okay, so that's the idea. That's the workaround. So you can either A, keep the rings and the earrings on the same side in every equip set that you write, or B, if you have to put them on different sides, you can actually hard code the item on your macro after the equip set change happens where it takes the item off by mistake. Then you will simply put the item back on. Okay, so that is a little bit of a couple of tricks I've learned about that, and I'll show you the rest of these equipment macros that I have for Thief. We'll look at these and kind of show you what I was thinking to save space and such. So this is a steal macro that I wrote. Basically what it does is, like, we're assuming you're in combat when you use this, and so you have only a split second between auto attacks as a thief to really not sacrifice on your DPS. So let's say you just had an attack round and you know that you're on a delay, like your character's physically on a delay and he can't attack again until his next attack round. That's how this game works. So when you catch that you're on that delay, you can actually spam some job abilities without fucking up that delay too much. Just know that when you're done spamming the job abilities, you go back on the delay. Alright, so obviously to not shoot yourself in the foot, you wouldn't actually wait halfway through your delay. Let's say your delay is 120. You wouldn't actually wait 60 and then do a job ability and then go back on your delay, because then your delay will reset and you'll have to wait the 120 again, so you're losing that time. So basically the delay will actually calculate multiple times if you interrupt it with job abilities. From what I've noticed in this game, that's how it works. When you're trying to actually win the parse on damage and you're trying to make sure you get the most damage every single attack round, it's very important that you don't wait in the middle of your delay to make changes with the job abilities to any job ability spam, any spell spam. No spams. You're simply on delay here, okay, when you do this, all right? And then I've noticed that my damage goes up as a result. So the best time to spam job abilities that I found is right after an attack. Right after an attack. Because then I can take the delay after I'm done spamming the job abilities, alright? So that's just what I've noticed. Somebody is probably going to correct me on that and be like, that's bullshit, I haven't noticed anything like that, and that's fine. I'm just saying from my personal experience, if I try to do 5 or 6 job abilities in a row, I lose DPS unless it happens back to back right after the attack round. That's what I've noticed. Alright, so let's move on, and I'll explain, like, this is my concept for this one macro. I go into an equip set that actually has some steel gear on it, and then I use the steel effect to get a bonus with the equip set that I equipped. Notice that the weight tag, I can't put weight on its own line because there's not enough room. I only have the 6 lines to play with here. So the weight tag is at the end, and it's actually not a slash weight like this, because at the beginning of the line you always use the slash, okay, unless you're chatting, in which case it goes to the default channel. But in most cases in your macro you're doing a command, the commands will always start with slash. But you can actually put a weight 1 at the end of a command. If it's at the end of a command, it will actually wait 1 second. It's the equivalent of writing slash wait 1, or just simply slash wait. I think as the default is actually 1 on that. But either way, so this is the way to kind of get 12 lines of code into the space of like 6 lines of code. And so I go equip set, steel set, put on my steel macro. Now I'm on line 2. Use my steel job ability, right? And then I'm going to wait again because of the animation. And then I'm going to put the other set of gear on, which augments my mug effect. I'm going to wait to make sure that it has had time to actually get equipped. And then I'm going to actually use the mug effect. And then I'm going to wait again. And then I'm going to put on my despoil set. And then I'm going to wait. And then I'm going to use my despoil effect. And then I'm going to wait. I mean, you could move these around, copy and paste. So that's my argument for why I always wait at the end. But you don't actually have to wait at the end. It doesn't do anything other than it makes it easier to move this line 6 to line 1 without writing any more code. That's the idea. So you might see stuff like that. So that's just me being lazy, pretty much, if there's a wait at the end. Okay, so that's the macro that I came up with for all that spam. So it will actually ignore any lines that are on cooldown. So if the steel or the mug is on cooldown but the despoil's not, it will just basically keep waiting and they get to this line, and then after all of these waits are executed, it will actually despoil, since the despoil wasn't on cooldown but the other 2 were. And I did equip these 2 sets, but I just equipped out of them into another set, so it's not relevant. But it might screw your DPS up a little bit if like this happens while you're attacking, which is why I recommended doing this after your attack phase, before your next attack phase, so there's like, you eliminate that issue where you're attacking in the wrong gear, for example. So the next macro I have here to show you guys is a collaborator macro for a thief. Basically, the collaborator target is any player, so you have to select target playable character, STPC, and you're going to be able to use that command here. Once you equip your collaborator gear and wait, then you can actually do your collaborator command on your selected target playable character, and then you'll do the collaborator, and then after a small wait, you'll actually equip back into your gear, which in this case is not my idle set, but it's actually my engaged medium accuracy set. Alright, so it just depends on what you want it to be in that case. So that's the collaborator, kind of basic, right? The accomplice is kind of the same thing. You equip the accomplice gear, then you wait, and then you do the accomplice ability on a selected target playable character, and then you wait, and then you equip another set of gear. Well, this isn't the exact same equipment, so my guess is when I used this last, I was actually doing it while I wasn't engaged or something. One of them. So one of them was an engaged set, and one of them was an idle set. That explains why they're different numbers. Maybe it is possible also that these are 2 different accuracy sets, like one's a high accuracy, one's a low accuracy. So I would use one collaborator over accomplice because they kind of do the same thing, but one would go into my high ac and one would go into my low ac or something like that. Just different ways to kind of screw around with the macro there. So I've changed that multiple times in the past. So we could see really quick what equip set 17 is if I still use it. I don't think I still use it. We'll see though. Alright, so 70. Yeah, it's my evasion set. And it's pretty much up to snuff. That's a pretty decent evasion set. I like it. Alright, so let's go back to the macro palette. And now we're going to talk about the feint set. So feint you're actually doing on yourself. It's a buff you give yourself that makes your next attack actually do whatever the hell feint does. It depends on your macros, your merits. It depends on your merits and job points and a lot of stuff and gear. All this stuff kind of is calculated when you use feint. So whatever you're using feint for, make sure you put the right equipment on for that. So I have a feint set. So equip set 93 is going to augment my feint ability. Then I'm going to do feint on myself, and then I'm going to put my medium accuracy set on with small weights in between. So let's go look at equip set 93. 93. Okay, that's my mug. So something here is probably going to benefit my feint, or I just simply overrode it. It's possible that I simply overrode it with my mug. Here's a mug 3. So this is definitely my mug. I'm trying to remember why I chose to do this with feint. Maybe because I had more critical gear on, and as far as I understand it, I think that's what I was going for with this set. I'm pretty sure that I was just kind of trying to put actually put one equip set and multi-purpose it. So the idea, I think, if I recall correctly, was that I was thinking feint, and this is probably correct, feint would trigger more often off of a critical swing than it would off of a non-critical swing. I'm not 100% sure if that's right, but I think that's what I was thinking when I wrote that equip set for this macro, and that would explain why I had all that critical gear on in that macro as well. Plus it looks cool as a lock style, so it's probably just multi-purpose stuff. Maybe it's overwritten since I made this. Maybe there's no actual equip set for feint, but there will eventually be something that augments feint if there isn't already. So then you would put that in that equip set, do it, and then use the feint job ability on the line too, and then go back into your regular engaged gear, right? So that's your feint macro. So this is Assassin Charge. If you have it merited, there's probably some gear that will help you with Assassin's Charge, and then you use that gear, a small weight, you use your Assassin's Charge job ability on yourself to give yourself the Assassin's Charge buff, and then you do a small weight, and then you just put on your other set of gear after that, alright? Whatever gear that is going to be. For Reverse Flourish, I'm sub-jobbing Dancer sometimes, so I have the Reverse Flourish macro here, just to save you a few steps from having to navigate through all the menus to get to Reverse Flourish. I just simply wrote it here. I don't have any gear changes for that. I'm sure you could do something like put like an enmity set on and then use Reverse Flourish and then actually go back into your engaged set or something like that. That would be pretty smart. Depends on what you're trying to do with that ability. Me, I was just trying to get the TP and use another Rudra Storm right away, so I didn't care. Alright, so the next macro I have here is Hide. So I have gear that augments the Hide effect, and I put that in equip set 92, and then I use Hide on myself, and then I go back into this other set of gear, which is probably an idle set, something like that. I don't know. It's some other set of gear. My Treasure Hunter set, I have gear that has Treasure Hunter Plus on it, and I put it on this equip set, so when I press this button to go into my TH set, I actually go into my TH set. And then my Larceny, for my SP, I have Larceny, so there's some gear that will actually help you with Larceny. You put that on, and then you use the Larceny command on the target that's getting the Larceny debuff, so you're stealing from a target with Larceny, that's what you're doing. So, and I'm not sure if the equip set actually does do anything to Larceny, this is just how I wrote it. So if you do have any gear that you would put on your character while you do Larceny, you would put it on this equip set, just like the last time, and you'd probably do a small weight, but I think the reason why I didn't do a small weight here is because I was just kind of making, I think what it is, in this case, is there really isn't any gear, but I was lazy, and so I kind of started on line 2, if you think about it, because with the equip sets and the target BNPC commands, I've noticed that you don't need a wait after them to go to the next line. You could simply go to the next line when you make these equip changes, but I've also noticed that sometimes when you go to the next line and you execute the command, the equip change hasn't finished yet on your character sheet, and so you've actually run into the issue where you didn't use your weapon skill damage gear on your weapon skill, which is why I would recommend putting a small wait after your equip set. But in this case specifically, larceny is one of those things that needs to happen immediately. It's like stun, it's like dispel, it's one of these things that you cannot wait for. You cannot wait for at all. So whether or not this equip set has had time to actually run its course and change all of my gear to another set, that is irrelevant. When I hit the larceny macro, I do the larceny ability. That's what happens. That's what's important. That's why there's no wait here, because if you're trying to do larceny really fucking quick and you think that you didn't hit the macro already because nothing happened, because you were on a small wait at the moment, like if there was a wait here, it would be wait 1, and if you panic, you would press the button and then wait 1, and while you're waiting 1, to do the larceny line 2, you press the button again because you're like, why am I not larcenying? Well, now you're waiting another 1. So I think that's why I took the wait out, because it ended up wiping me once, and so I cut it. And that's why this looks a little bit different from the other ones. I guess that's the best reason I can give you, is if you're worried about panicking and pressing the macro multiple times because you didn't think that it actually went off, then you probably should not start the macro with a delay, like with a wait. And in this case, that's what I did. Alright, so in this case, it's like put some gear on, and then larceny the target, and then wait, and then target the target, and then use larceny again. In case I wasn't targeting the target to begin with, this first line would have happened, no target, so that it just fails, but it does the small wait, and then I target, and then I larceny again. That's the one way I think I can do it. If I take this wait out, I think if I remember correctly, it was actually glitching when I did this, depending on the actual state of what the target was, if there was no target versus if there was a target at the time of execution of this macro. So this is the way that I designed it. Basically what this does, you guys, is if I'm actually not targeting anything on line 2, it will simply execute line 2, do the small wait, and then target the target I was supposed to target. And this also gives me a small period of time to actually realign my character's face so I can actually target the target. You see what I'm saying? So now there's the target there. Now I can actually target the NPC and actually hit something. So it just gives me a small second to adjust my character's direction so I can actually target the thing that I was already like supposed to be targeting. And this is just kind of like a catch-all line here where it didn't actually get executed if the first one got executed because it was on cooldown, but if the first one didn't get executed, then it gets executed. So it's just a catch-all to kind of make sure that larceny goes off. Pretty cool stuff. Alright, so the next line, this is some more stuff that I made. Basically for Diaga, you probably need, I don't know, some gear for that, and you would put that on in this slot, and then you would wait, you would do the Diaga spell, and then maybe you're trying to gain enmity, so you use your enmity set for this. I don't know why you would be trying to augment Diaga in any way with gear, but you could do something like that with enmity, and then when you play the Diaga spell on whatever target non-playable character, which is why there's an N in this, then the Diaga spell will hit them, all of their AoE surrounding mobs will get hit, and then I will do a small wait, and then I will equip another set of gear, okay, and then I'll do a medium wait, and then I will equip another set of gear, and then I will do a small wait. Oh, excuse me, a large wait, followed by a small wait, followed by another equip set. So when I wrote this, I think what I was doing was pulling monsters in some zone, some arbitrary zone, and I think what I was trying to do was pull all the monsters with my fast cast set. So maybe this was a fast cast, and then I casted Diaga, and then while Diaga was casting, I put on my movement speed set, okay, in this line, probably, and then after a small wait, I put on my tank set, possibly, or vice versa. Maybe I put on my tank set here for a small period of time while I was casting spells. Maybe I was getting hit by like 20 monsters or so. So the way this would have executed was, because this was carefully written, the way this would have probably worked was like the fast cast on the Diaga or evasion set, so I'm not getting hit by other targets that are on me while I'm casting the Diaga. Maybe this is a spell interruption set for the Diaga. Cast the Diaga, I have the small weight so I don't get hung up on anything. And then on the third line, it's like, okay, this is a set of gear that would be relevant while I'm casting Diaga. Okay, and then after I'm done casting Diaga, I need another set of gear that would be relevant, which would probably be movement speed gear. So then for 50 seconds I'm kiting stuff, or whatever the case is. And then there's a small weight 1 here. I don't remember exactly why I did this weight 1. There was a reason, but I don't remember what it was. And then after that, small weight, I do equip set 20, which I guess is my idle set. Something like that. So this was probably to pull monsters to a camp in Rizunjima, possibly. Pull a whole bunch of monsters to one spot, and then idle, or put my capacity cape on in one of these lines, and then idle. So there's a lot of different equip sets you can incorporate in a single macro, and depending on how you do the weights and stagger them, it's like you're basically having the gameplay itself with the equip sets and with your macros. So if that's the kind of party that you have where you're basically doing one thing every couple of minutes, but you need different gear throughout those couple of minutes, well, this is probably a good way to write a macro that will do just that. Alright? So Cure 4, this is a Cure 4 macro. I don't know how often you're going to need this on Thief, but, you know, I did a lot of Thief White Mage, so I needed to have something for Cure 4. So I had an equip set for Cure 4. I think this was like a fast cast, spell interruption kind of line. Maybe this was the fast cast line right here, and the job ability for the Divine Seal, and then the Cure spell. I don't know why there's a 3-second wait there. I don't remember. There was a reason. Then the Cure spell on the target. Okay, it's a playable character for the Cure spell, so select target playable character. So I actually hit them with the Cure spell, and then the Cure spell is casting, so I have to have a small wait for the next line of the macro. So while the Cure spell is casting, I need to do what exactly? I need Cure potency gear on, I need spell interruption rate gear on, I need damage taken minus gear on, so that's all in this equip set 17. So then I put that on, and finish the Cure spell. And then, you know, do a whatever size weight that I need, and then go into like an idle set or something like that. So that's what I came up with this for this one. So just a little different way to write a Cure macro. If you're subbing White Mage, maybe this is particularly useful depending on what equip sets you put on at what times. And I think that you can't go past 50, which might be why I had a 51 in the last one. I don't know. I think 50 might be the max for this. I was thinking it was 60, but maybe that it's 50 in the tags. I don't know. I do not know. Alright, so this is my Sneak Attack Rudra Storm macro. So this is a macro that's actually going to do Sneak Attack followed by Rudra Storm. So there's a lot of different things going on in this macro, so let's talk about them. The first line is going to be a line of gear that is going to augment my Sneak Attack, most likely. So I'm going to put on a set of gear that augments my Sneak Attack. And then I'm going to put on a specific item that actually does augment my Sneak Attack. And I'm going to try to keep that item on, okay? So this item needs to be equipped when I execute Rudra Storm. Alright, so you can see that there's no other equip set changes after this equipment is added to my character. There's no other equip set changes before Rudra Storm. So I'm augmenting Sneak Attack, and I'm using the Skulker's Armlets when the Sneak Attack buff is used up. As far as I recall, now this might be wrong, but from my testing, I recall that the Skulker's Armlets had to be on when I used the Sneak Attack. Actually, when I used the buff, when the buff left my character and the damage was dealt, that was when Skulker's Armlets needed to be on. So that presents a problem for everyone using Gearswap and everyone not doing it in this manner, because if they think that you need the gear on when you use the job ability, which most gear needs to be on when you use the job ability, and then it can be changed out for other stuff, in this case that's incorrect. In this case, you need to have the armlets on when you use the job ability's buff. When you use the buff up, the buff gets used, the damage is calculated at that moment, and at that moment, if these armlets are not on, well, the damage is not going to calculate this buff from this gear. It's just simply not. At least on this particular item as of this year. Now, whether or not the +2 and 3 is different, I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know is that after testing, the same with Trick Attack, you need to have this gear on when you use the buff up. When you use the buff and you actually deal the damage, this has to be on. In the Trick Attack, the other armlets need to be on. Pillagers or whatever it is. And that's the case. And I think I tested the Omen +3s on the Trick Attack one already, and it was the same way. So yeah, you need to have them on when you use the Rudra Storm ability. They need to be on. So if you put your Rudra Storm weapon skill set on, you done fucked up because you took off your Skulker's armlets. So I think the way that this works is I have my weapon skill on my 11. I think equip set 11 is the weapon skill. So let's go look at equip set 11 really quick, just to make sure that I'm telling you guys, yep, it's the weapon skill. Okay, so this is my weapon skill gear. Weapon skill gear, right here. Alright, so notice that it says Skulker's armlets +1 right here. So there are multiple ways to do this, and I think I did this multiple different ways just for redundancy, just to make sure that I never fucked it up. But basically, here's what it is, guys. Here's what it is. In this equip set, this is named weapon skill, let me change name, and you can see that it is actually weapon skill Rude 11S. Okay, so that means that this is for Rudra Storm while I'm sneak attacking. So I would use weapon skill set equip set 11 every time that I want to actually use sneak attack Rudra Storm specifically. If I was going to do trick attack Rudra Storm, I would use this one. And you can see it's the same set, but this is swapped out. So you can do this. This is recommended if you want to do sneak attack Rudra Storm and trick attack Rudra Storm. If you want to do sneak attack Shark Bite and trick attack Shark Bite, you would need two different ones, for example. Or if you wanted to use Manda and you wanted to use your relic weapon skill instead, then the same exact thing would apply. If you wanted to do evisceration, you get the idea. You're gonna need an equip set for that, specifically for that, and that is going to have the specific gear that augments the triple attack, or the specific gear. I'm sorry, did I say triple attack? The specific gear that augments sneak attack, and the specific gear that augments trick attack on these. Alright, and so that's why I have different equip sets. I actually have one that I named, I think, Rudra Storm Basic or something like that. I'll find it really quick. Actually, it's probably in the macro anyway, so we'll just find it that way. Where are you? Maybe it's not here. Okay, well, there's one of them that I just put another glove on that's not augmenting sneak attack or trick attack. That's basically the equip set for when I just use a naked Rudra Storm or a naked evisceration or anything like that with no sneak attack or trick attack. Then I simply use that one with the gloves not being the sneak attack or the trick attack gloves. But in the macro, I also make changes. In the macro, I execute the line that already puts those pieces of gear on, but then I actually hard code it, so it has to put those on if they're not on. If they're not on for whatever reason in this line, it automatically puts them on here. And then I use the job ability, and then I use the Rudra Storm. But notice how this works. The job ability goes on me, I wait 1 second, then I use the Rudra Storm. I can't just go like this. I can't just go sneak attack Rudra Storm. I can't. When I functionally do this, I have to have a small delay between the sneak attack and the Rudra Storm, where the Rudra Storm doesn't get looked at. It gets ignored because you're still trying to process this command. So you have to have the small wait. So you have to actually time it. You have to make sure that if you're attacking really fast, that you time it before you hit the button, so you don't attack in between your sneak attack and your Rudra Storm. Like, you don't want to do a basic attack in between your sneak attack and your Rudra Storm during that 1 second wait, so you have to time it. You time it, and then once you've got the timing figured out, you press the button, you execute all of these commands, and then it does sneak attack Rudra Storm every single time for you, and you don't have to navigate through the menus and screw things up. Because Thief attacks really quickly, if you're doing this from the menu, you have to be an expert, and you have to be very careful, or you're going to screw it up completely, and you're not going to actually sneak attack Rudra Storm like you want to. And you're just going to get laughed at the end of the party when you're not even at the top of the parse, okay? Because the Thief should almost always have the top slot in the parse in a melee group. Within reason, the Thief should be up there, you guys. It should be up there, alright? And so that's how this macro works. So take a moment to actually study this and understand that what's going on here. You've got your weapon skill set with your Skulker's armlets added. You do your sneak attack on yourself, you have a small weight. You do your weapon skill on the target, and you have a small weight. And then you put on another set of gear. This is going to be what you would like to have on after you're done weapon skilling, and then you're going to have a medium-sized weight, and then you're going to probably put on your idle set after that, which would have like your movement speed gear on it, and your regen and refresh gear. Alright, so that would be basically like you being lazy. If you want to do one button press and then do all this, then you can. So this is probably your engaged attack gear, and this is probably your idle gear in this case. So that's the sneak attack rudras. The trick attack rudras is kind of the same thing. Like, you want to see that really the only thing that really changes here is this particular line. I'm not even using the equip set that I made for trick attack rudras. Like, there was another equip set for trick attack rudras that I'm just simply not using. I simply just hardcode change it right here. So in this case, you could use the same one equip set on both of them and then just hard change it in the line that is relevant, which would be this line right here where you want to actually put your pillager's armlets on for trick attack. Then you're going to use the trick attack and the rudras. But if I'm not mistaken, you can actually use the trick attack before you equip the pillagers, and then equip the pillagers and use the trick attack up, and it will still work. But I just make sure that the pillagers are on every moment moving forward from when I use the trick attack or sneak attack on myself. And yeah, it probably doesn't actually augment that particular job ability on that line. Like, I could technically do these in either order, but if I did these in either order, then I would want to actually say like, move this down and do the weight 1 here, and then take the weight 1 out of this. Because if I do trick attack myself with no weight, and then add the pillagers on, and then weapon skill after a small weight, that will work, because the pillagers have been equipped ever since I used trick attack, basically. Use trick attack, equip pillagers hands, weight, weapon skill. Works. That works. But if I go trick attack before I equip my gloves, and then small weight, well, during that small weight window, if the timing was not perfect, I probably auto-attacked. And then after the auto-attack, I equipped my pillager's gloves. But now I don't have the buff anymore because I already auto-attacked. Do you see why I think it's just smarter to do it before the job ability? Because it's going to be there. So if you have that mistake, you still get the buff. When you use the ability, and the ability buff gets used up, you still get the buff because you had the gear equipped. So in this case, yeah, I like this order. This is pretty well thought out. I would recommend this particular macro design. Something like that. And the next one is my steel. We've already seen that one. It's just on this palette, just so since I play with the controller, I can use my left finger or my right finger and still steal. Depending on what I'm doing, I could still navigate over and do the steal macro really quick. And I don't have to really think about it all that much. I could just simply do it whenever it's up. Alright, so the next one is the bully. This is a really clutch macro to have, you guys. Bully is extremely, extremely strong on Thief. It's like the best fucking job ability in the game, I think, personally. I love this job ability. There's no reason whatsoever to not put this on a macro. You need to have this macroed. It's so strong. You want to do this to actually be able to let your party know that you're doing it as well. So like on my new page, I use bully, and I actually have a statement that says bully on for 30 seconds, and then I use the bully. Alright, so you could probably, I would recommend that, especially if there are other thieves in your party, because you need everyone to know that bully is on the monster. Bully is a very strong debuff on the monster, but what helps your party the most is that if there are any other thieves there, they know right away that since bully's in effect, they can sneak attack from the front of the monster, and that's what's important. That's why I like to let everyone know that I use bully. So for 30 seconds, you can sneak attack from the front of the monster. So if you see that message in the chat, that means that for 30 seconds you can sneak attack from the front. So if you are tanking as the thief, you could simply sneak attack Rudra Storm anyway, because you don't have to be behind the monster while bully is on. Okay, you could be any direction facing the monster, doesn't care where the monster is facing at that point for 30 seconds. That's why I have it macroed. That's why in my other macro palette I actually have the party getting told that it's being used, and so on and so forth. So I don't think there's any equipment that augments bully. If there is, you're going to want to equip that before you do the bully. But then you're going to want to do the bully. Alright. So next up we have a simple flash macro. This is just kind of depending on what your sub job might be. Maybe you flash with Paladin sub or something. I don't know. I don't know why you would need flash. But if you have the space, you might as well use it. So on this macro palette I have a flash macro. I put on some gear that actually helps me cast flash. It might be fast cast, it might be spell interruption rate, it might be any number of things, probably enmity plus, something like that. So then the flash spell, we all know that the flash spell is really, really fast casting. So after 3 seconds it should already be gone. So that would mean that whatever we equipped to the flash spell, well, we would equip beforehand, pretty much. Unless we use Gearswap or something, and then it wouldn't matter. But we're going to equip everything first. we're going to cast the flash. It's going to have all of the buffs of this equip set, and then we're going to have a small wait, and then we're going to put on our idle set probably, or whatever set of gear we need after the flash, whatever it happens to be that we happen to need, we would put on that third line. And so that's kind of how you could write a flash macro. A little bit different. For utsusemi, okay, so you sub ninja, right? Okay, that's fine. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you subbed samurai. Maybe this macro works for both of them. You see how this macro kind of works for both of them? If I'm subbing samurai, I can use third eye instead of utsusemi just by pressing my utsusemi macro, and it's kind of the same thing. I just press my utsusemi macro, and if I'm not actually subbing ninja, I still kind of get shadows. So that's just something I thought of one day when I noticed I had space here. I would just dedicate it to samurai so I could press the utsusemi, and since I know that it's there, I can just press utsusemi more often when I'm not subbing ninja, and it's still useful, right? So I have an equip set on for whatever the buff is that I'm going to be doing to help the buff out, alright, and then I'm going to actually do the buff. It's probably going to be utsusemi. If I'm not subbing samurai, then this gets ignored, and it goes to this line anyway. Alright, and then there's a small wait here, because if I'm casting Utsusemi Ni, I can't also cast Utsusemi Ichi, alright? But if I fast casted Utsusemi Ni, then I could cast Utsusemi Ichi within 1 second afterward. That would be a legal play. If I casted Utsusemi Ni and it's on cooldown, well, when this line gets executed, it gets ignored, but the wait still happens, and while it's getting ignored, I can use Utsusemi Ichi. If I didn't put a wait there, though, and Utsusemi Ni was on cooldown, it would skip Utsusemi Ichi. This whole thing would bug out because I didn't have the wait. So you need the wait there when you're doing stuff like this with spells, mostly with spells and job abilities, I've noticed. Like, it just really depends. But this works. This works every single time. Unless I'm like Samurai Ninja, it might not work because there's no delay here. So this line that gets ignored would not get ignored if I was playing Samurai and I actually did execute this. But this is for my Thief, so I'm either subbing Samurai or Ninja, so it works for me every time with Thief because I can only do one or the other. And then I put on some set of gear after I'm done with everything. And then my Flee, I have an equip feat command here, and I follow it up with a wait 1 just to make sure that that gear has had time to actually successfully equip. I've noticed a couple of times without using the wait that depending on what clock cycle the game is on when you press the button, it will actually just quickly use the Flee before it has had time to equip the feat. Just because of the way computers work, they're all on a clock cycle. So depending on the game's clock cycle, if this was executed at the wrong time, it would skip. It wouldn't have time to finish adding the equip feat command before it actually issued the job ability command. And so the job ability command has actually been fired off before, where it didn't have the Pillager's Plains +1 on it. And it's easy to tell because you can tell from the timer on the buff that it's going to be 30 or 45 seconds or whatever it happens to be. If it's more than 30 seconds, then the feat has had time to actually get used. And if it hasn't been more than 5 seconds, then you see that's the idea. And I think actually right now I have the +3 version of this, so if I were to use this, I would need to actually use the +3s in the first line. And then the second line is actually just using the job ability. It's always going to be me, so it doesn't matter that you write Pwnsalot or you just ME in brackets, either one, in angle brackets, that would work too. And then there's a wait after that, because you're actually fleeing after that, so you don't need to equip anything else for a small period of time. You're fine just using these boots and running while you're running. Like, nothing else matters other than the movement speed that you get with the boots that you happen to have equipped, which also happen to augment your fleet. They also happen to have movement speed on them. So since there's two different buffs in the same item in this case, then you would put them on, you would flee, you would leave them on because they have movement speed boost, and then you would keep fleeing. And then after the wait, you would wait again because you probably are still running, even though you don't have your flee anymore. You would still be running, so you wouldn't want to change them right away. And then eventually, you're going to change back into your idle set. And if you're running for more than 2 minutes and you haven't gotten to your destination, you'll pretty much instantly know that that your movement speed has been nerfed. So you'll just be able to actually press another button to put on your boots again if you want. There's like an idle equip set somewhere that you could put on. Alright, so you could just press the button for that and it would just put on your idle gear or your movement speed gear or whatever it happens to be. And then for this last one on this macro palette, this is an evasion macro. This is just another thing that I came up with to kind of fill up space. And basically what this does is it's like, okay, first line is going to put on my evasion set, and then it's going to wait. It's going to wait for a while, long wait, and then I'm going to wait again for a long time. And then if I wanted, I could actually do, I could actually go to this line and go wait some more, like here. I'm pretty sure that would still work. Alright, so do a long wait, followed by another long wait, and another long wait, and another long wait, and then I put on my idle set. So after like 4+ minutes, I put on my idle set. And that's what this macro does, right here. So basically this is for like, if I'm just tanking a bunch of stuff, and I'm not really doing anything other than avoiding hits, then I'll just put this stuff on. Something like that. And I could make small tweaks to the gear otherwise. So that is just an example of how you would play Thief, vanilla, with no Gearswap stuff. Basically that's kind of some of the macros that I've designed that would help you play the job. Just take note of some of the different ways that you could use those 6 lines, and it's kind of important. Now I'd like to take a moment to show you advanced macros. If like you actually do use Gearswap and you want to know how to kind of use the macro palette a little bit better for your character, just kind of play the game a little bit stronger. Some friends taught me some commands that they use with their Gearswap, and so I'll just go over them with you. This is another palette that I just kind of use. It's got some examples of Gearswap macros on it and some other stuff that I use, like that I just thought was interesting. So for example, this is a macro that's doesn't have anything to do with Gearswap or anything in particular, but it does particularly do 2 things. This macro basically targets a question mark on the ground in Abyssy, and it either trades it a scale or it fails to trade it a scale because I don't have one, and it trades it a transparent insect wing instead. What this is for is this is one macro that I use to spawn 2 different bosses in Abyssy to do like some sort of Abyssy Empyrean item upgrade quest. So if I'm doing an Empyrean item and I know that there's like 4 different monsters, well, I'm only ever going to have the pop item for the particular question mark 1/4 of the time, so all these other lines are going to get skipped. So basically what I'm saying is like I would farm the scale in one area, and then in that area I would spawn the boss. I don't have the wing, so the wing doesn't matter. Now that I've spawned the boss, I leave that area, I go to the area that I need to farm the transparent insect wing, and then I spawn the boss in that area with the wing. They don't accept a scale, but I don't have a scale in my inventory at that point anyway, so that line gets ignored. So the second line gets ignored and the third line would execute in this case. But in the first case, the second line is actually executed, and the third line is ignored because I've spawned the boss. I'm not targeting anything anymore anyway, and even if I was, I don't have the wing, so the third line would simply get ignored either way. But it still works to spawn both of those monsters, and you could see very easily that you could spawn 3 other monsters with the same exact macro. So if you're doing Glavoid or something like that, then maybe this is a different way that you could actually spawn all those monsters with one macro. Really cool, interesting trick that I learned. And there's another cool one that I'd like to show you when I get to the Paladin macros that does kind of the same thing. So I will get to Paladin eventually. But let's talk about the rest of these macros on this palette first, and then I'll switch to Paladin and I'll show you some Paladin macros. Okay, so this is a Sybil Flea macro. You can see that there's no equip sets needed, because if you're using this particular design, then it's probably safe to guess that you're using a Gearswap program, because that's going to actually put your flea gear on for you every single time when you try to actually use flea. It puts the flea gear on and then it uses flea, so you're always just going to have the flea gear on, so you don't need to actually put the equip set in this line. But if you're not using Gearswap, you have to have these lines in this manner. You have to have the equipment on the line if you're not using Gearswap. Otherwise, when you flee, it's just not going to put that gear on for you. All right, but if you are, then you can actually write like this, because it's just instantly going to check the job ability you're using, and it's going to buff it with, depending on what your Lua file has written, it's going to put that on for you. Okay. So in this line, same thing. If you're casting Flash and you're using Gearswap, there's some line of code in your Gearswap, maybe not, that actually benefits, buffs the Flash spell. So you would try to execute the Flash spell, and then we would check your Gearswap Lua, and it'd be like, okay, when I'm casting Flash, I need this gear on, so put this gear on, then cast Flash. Well, okay, now that I've finished casting that spell, I'm not casting that spell anymore, now go back to my idle set. All this happens with the Gearswap. depending on how you wrote the Lua, is putting this gear on for you. You're changing it 5 or 6 times, and then you go to this next line. Then you go to this next line, and now you're on this line. You've already changed your gear like 5 or 6 times, dude. Like, it doesn't even matter. Well, probably like 2 or 3, but you get the idea. And then I use the range attack. Check to make sure I have all of my range attack gear on, or my range accuracy gear on. Okay, now shoot the arrow. Okay, now I'm range attacking. Okay, I'm done range attacking. Okay, gear swap. I'm done range attacking. What do I put on after I'm done range attacking? Okay, that would be my idle set. Okay, great. Put the idle set on. You see what I'm saying? This is stuff that I'm not writing in this line because the gear swap is going to be doing it for you in this case. So if you use gear swap, you can write much simpler macros, but there are also much more complex macros that you have access to, which I'll get to. Okay, so this is a simple command. Whether or not you're using Gearswap is irrelevant for this one. This is just another macro design that I have that switches between a sword and a dagger. This is a simple command. This is what I wanted to show you on Paladin as well, to switch between sword and greatsword. This is for Thief. This is what I would use to switch between sword and dagger. I also have one that would switch into a club. Basically, I call it club. I think I overwrote it, but sometimes you need a club on Thief. So if you're doing specific content that requires blunt damage, then you would need a club. So you would have a macro called club, and the first line would have your club on it, and the second line would have your dagger on it. And that would toggle between your club and your dagger. In this one, though, I'm toggling between sword and dagger. So I switch between sword and dagger every time I press this button. Because if I have the sword equipped, it gets ignored, it switches to the dagger. If I have the dagger equipped, it switches to the sword and ignores the dagger, because there's no weight here. Since there's no weight here, it's always going to ignore the second line. It's always going to ignore the second line. So if one of these lines gets actually executed, the other one gets ignored every single time, no matter which one is equipped currently, which is why I like this design. Pretty interesting design. Alright, so an evasion. This is a gear swap macro. What this means is it's going to issue the command GSCEVA. What that means is your Lua has to have a file in it named EVA, or excuse me, your Lua program has to have a line of code in it that has EVA written in it. And so when you actually use this macro, what you're actually writing is the same thing as this. / would allow you to access your window interface, or you can do, I think the insert key on your keyboard would pull up the window the red text that allows you to know that you're talking to the console, window 4 console, and not the game itself. So if you're in that menu, you could do the same thing. Basically, that's what the / does. That's what the /console does as well. So these are just different ways to write it, but from what I understand, you cannot actually write a macro / GSCEVA because it wouldn't understand what you meant by //. So in that case, in the macros section, you have to actually write the console, like you have seen, like you see on line 1 here. So you would write the console, and then you would write the command you're trying to issue to the console, which in this case is a gear swap command. So you would need the type gear swap or GS, and then it's a command. I guess that's what the C is for. I think all of them have a C in there. I'm not 100% sure. I'm no expert. I'm just telling you guys the information as I get it. And so in this case, you have something in your Lua file that changes your evasion gear, and it's called EVA. The set itself is called EVA, so you would press this and the EVA would execute, and it would change to your evasion gear anyway. So that actually doesn't actually write an equip set. You could write an equip set for that though, but the gear swap essentially is a bank full of equip sets. That's essentially what it is. So that evasion set is in here somewhere. I have one of my equip sets with evasion in it. Okay, probably not that one. That's probably Rune Fencer. I think it's this one. So this is my Thief Evasion equip set. So if I'm playing vanilla client, I can still type /equip set 17 and then go into this equip set. That's not a problem. Or I could go ahead and type this command here. It does the exact same thing. It's just the exact same kind of command that goes into the gear swap and issues the evasion command to put on the evasion set. That's all it does. Alright, so in this case, we have kind of the same sort of thing. This is for a tank set. You can see that there's an equip set equivalent. So basically the first line is basically put on my tank set. The second line is basically put on my tank set. So in this case, I'm like talking to, I'm having the window 4 console talk to the gear swap add-on and use the command PDT to put on the tank set. So if you have something in your Lua called PDT, then you could actually use this command. It would put on your equip set just the exact same way that it would be putting on your tank set right here. Okay. Alright, so that's that. And so we have another one for the magic tank. There's an equip set for that, or you could use the Gearswap program to actually, you could talk to the console, have it talk to Gearswap, and put on the actual Gearswap MDT flag, which would be your magic damage taken set that you have on your Lua file, right? So that's all that's doing. For the treasure hunter, it's the exact same thing. You can put on an equip set, or you could talk to Gearswap and you could put on a treasure hunter set. Same thing. Both of these lines do the exact same thing. It puts on the treasure hunter set. Okay, so obviously you don't need both. You need one or the other, depending on what you want to use. So there's a hybrid here. Basically, there's a hybrid that in this particular example is named C2. The line of code is named C2 in this example, and you could name it whatever you want, but you have to line it up with this macro. If you take somebody's Lua and they named it differently, their hybrid set would be like a combination between like maybe their evasion and their tank, or their accuracy and their evasion, anything. Like whatever their hybrid is programmed on their Gearswap, that's what's going to get flagged here, and that's what you're going to actually... So this would be the equivalent of basically writing a new equip set, like 99, and then typing in equip set 99. That's basically all it is. So it looks complicated, but it's quite simple, you guys. It's not really that complicated. It's just basic text. Instead of actually looking at a grid full of gear, it's a bunch of text with the gear names, and that's the only difference. So this accuracy one, this is a different one. So what this does is this toggles between different modes of accuracy, however many that you would write in the program. I think you could write more than 2 options. I don't think it's an on-off toggle. It might be. This might be an on-off toggle in this case, but you could write them differently where there's 3 different toggles, like a ceiling fan. You hit the cord on the ceiling fan and it goes a different speed multiple different times, and then it's off. Well, you have that kind of ability with Gearswap as well, and you could put that in your macro as well. So you press one button and it toggles. So in this case, I'm toggling into accuracy gear in this example. So I'm telling Window Forward to talk to Gearswap and toggle into my accuracy gear in this case. So it's going to put the accuracy gear on. All right. So that's quite simple. You could make a regular vanilla equivalent equip set with just like whatever the name of the accuracy set is. All right. Well, it would be a number, but you get the idea. So it's quite simple. Okay. So then in this next line, you could see that the equip sets are echoed out, because in this case you don't need them, because they're going to be if you're using Gearswap, well, it doesn't matter what's here, because what's going to happen is after that line's executed, as soon as it sees that you're executing a job ability or a weapon skill or a magic spell, it's going to just simply switch into whatever it's programmed to switch into for you. So it's going to do the equip set here on this line. It's going to catch the job ability Assassin's Charge me, and before it actually lets that command go through, it's going to put on the equip set 87. Basically, that's what's happening in the Gearswap under the hood. So the Gearswap sees the Assassin's Charge, it notices that you have a line of code in the file, in the Lua file, that says if I'm using Assassin's Charge, put this gear on. So it puts that gear on, and then it uses Assassin's Charge. And then after that, it's going to put on its regular default, whatever the case is, whether it be engaged, whether it be idle set, whatever the situation is, it's going to put on that particular gear every single time on the 3rd line. So if you're engaged, you're going to have your engaged set on when you get to line 3. If you're not engaged, you're going to have your idle set on when you get to line 3 every single time, but it's the same macro. And the only way that that's possible is because the Gearswap knows whether you're engaged or not when you finish line 2. Okay, so it will just instantly put on the correct set of gear for line 3, which is why people prefer to use Gearswap over vanilla shell, because they can use the same macro for multiple board multiple states of combat, whether they're engaged or not, whether they would like to tank or not like to tank. They have this functionality because the Gearswap remembers that they're in tank mode, or that they're in evasion mode, or that they're in idle mode. You get the idea? So they can actually make the changes to the gear for you, all in one line, multiple different ways for this line 3. It could be any number of different equipment equipped when you get to line 3 in this situation. If you're using Gearswap, depending on how it's all written, it could be any number of different equipment combinations, but it's still the same 5 lines of code. All right. So when you get to this line 3 using the Gearswap, what you're going to notice is that it's another job ability. So what's going to happen is it's going to look through the Gearswap Lua file that you gave it, and it's going to look for the feint command. If you're using feint, you need to put on specific gear. It's going to find out what that gear is. It's going to equip it, and then it's going to issue this command. And when it finally issues this command, it's going to put itself back in idle gear, or whatever the board state is. If you're engaged, it's going to put itself in engaged gear, and then it's still going to wait 1.
after that. Alright? After that wait is done, well, Gearswap is idling. It's not doing anything. It's waiting for another command. The next command happens because you waited 1. So line 4 of this macro happens. So this weapon skill command gets issued. Gearswap's, oh wait, you're trying to weapon skill. Okay. Alright, I can see that that's a legal play. Alright, I'd love for you to Rudra Storm right now. But this Lua file you gave me tells me that you have gear you would like to equip for Rudra Storm. So let's go ahead and equip that really quick. Alright, we're going to equip that really quick. Alright, now we're going to use the Rudra Storm weapon skill. But there's this other thing. Before I can use this Rudra Storm weapon skill, there's this other thing I've noticed really quick, and that's also that you have Trick Attack active on your character right now. So what that means is that the Trick Attack buff is on your character, so I can't Rudra Storm with your regular Rudra Storm weapon skill set. I have to do a set combine between your Rudra Storm weapon skill set and the hand slot has to be the Trick Attack buff gear, which would be your Pillager's gloves. I just have to have that on right now. So I'm going to calculate that for you before I let you actually weapon skill. And it's going to be instant speed. And I'm instantly going to make that calculation and then weapon skill. And you're not going to even notice that I did this for you. But by the time you finish weapon skilling, you will have weapon skilled in the correct glove that you needed, whether it be no glove or pillagers or skulkers, depending on what the board state was, depending on what actual buff you had on your character. I will have actually, as Gearswap program, actually put the right gear on for your weapon skill to optimize your damage. That's what I'm going to do for you. And you're not even going to notice it. You're not even going to notice it. But when you look at the parse, when you look at the damage output, when you see that you one-shot the mob, that's when you're going to notice it. That's when you're going to notice the difference. Because you're going to know that the guy next to you didn't use Gearswap because he didn't have nearly as much damage as you did. Because no matter how good he is at pressing buttons on his equip sets, no matter how good he is at switching from equip set to 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 do one thing, Gearswap can do it faster. Simply can do it faster if the code was written correctly, and when you get to this line, boom, done. Executed. Flawlessly. Now the Rudra Storm hits. Now the damage gets calculated. Now the damage is dealt. Now Gearswap goes back to idle mode. And you have the wait 2. So during the wait 2, Final Fantasy XI is like, okay, we're going to wait 2, and we're going to go to line 5 of this code. Okay, this line 5 is whatever command it happens to be. In this case, it's an echo because we're using Gearswap to equip the set of gear that we would have equipped after Rudra Storm executed anyway. Okay, so in this case, Gearswap gets finishes the Rudra Storm and puts on this equip set 88 for you. So we don't need the equip set 88 here. But if you're not using Gearswap, or let's say you're going to a friend's house and you want to use the same, you want to use a different machine to play the game and he doesn't have Gearswap, well, you have the macros here, so you could just uncomment this out by removing the echo flag at the beginning of the line, and you basically kind of have the right sort of code to help you play the game on some other machine without Gearswap, if you're playing vanilla. So you can bounce, writing it like this kind of helps you bounce between different ways of playing the game. You can play with or without Gearswap if you write it like this, because you could just uncomment this whenever you want, and have the ability to do the equip set anyway. You get the idea? That's kind of what's going on under the hood. Like, I'm a software engineer, so I have a lot of information about how programs are executed and how things actually get executed under, like, behind the scenes when you play a game. And so that's kind of what Gearswap's doing for you in this case. So obviously there's a lot more equip sets happening than I have commented out here, but there's not enough room that I'm given to actually write all of them, so that's why I have it like this. It's exactly why I have it like this. Alright, so the next line we have is a Sneak Attack Rudra Storm. So you can see that this is just Rudra Storm with Assassin's Charge and Feint. I don't have enough room on the next one to do Assassin's Charge and Feint, but I'll just do Sneak Attack Rudra Storm. Typically with Thief I'm subbing Warrior, so one macro is going to do a couple of buffs and then a weapon skill, and the other macro is going to do a couple of different buffs, because the other buffs are on cooldown. And then another weapon skill. So in this case, I'm trying to do all of the job abilities that I can. I'm trying to make sure that they're always on cooldown when I do these macros. So if I'm Thief War, on this first one, it's like, okay, use my Assassin's Charge, use my Feint, use my weapon skill. On the second one, it's like, okay, I have Sneak Attack up. In that case, I'm I probably don't have Assassin Charge or Feint up because I already used them on the previous weapon skill. Sneak attack is off of cooldown now. I'm going to use this macro. Alright, if Feint was actually off of cooldown, I'm going to use it here. Feint in the first line. Alright, second line, Sneak attack. Third line, Rudra Storm. Fourth line, Provoke. Fifth line, Berserk. Sixth line, Warcry. So that looks pretty basic, but obviously here, there's no equip changes. There's no equip changes. So this is only a good macro if you're using Gearswap. If you're not using Gearswap, you need to actually make several different macros that do all of this individually. Individually, you would make these macros. But if you're using Gearswap, the Gearswap add-on will actually look at all of these abilities before they execute and put on the gear that you told them to put on. So in this case, specifically, this is what Gearswap is thinking. When you get to first line, your Final Fantasy XI executes the command, job ability feint me. Gearswap catches the command right here. Catches the command right here before the wait, and it's like, okay, I can't do feint me yet. I can't feint on myself until I actually consult the Lua file. I'm consulting the Lua file. The Lua file says if I'm trying to do feint, I need to put on this gear. Okay, so I'm putting on specific gear. At this point, once this gets executed, Gearswap's like, nah, hold on, hold that thought. Put on that gear, now execute that same command. Okay, so that same command is executed. Okay, now that that same command is executed, we're still right here. We're still right here. Gearswap's like, okay, we're done, so we're going to go ahead and idle, put on whatever gear that you need to put on. If you're engaged, you're putting on your engaged set. If you're tanking, you're putting on your tank set. If you're not tanking and you're not engaged, if you're idling and you're just sitting there, then you're going to put on your regen, refresh, evasion, movement speed gear set, that sort of thing, alright? That's what you're going to put on here, alright? And then you're going to get the wait 1 tag. That's going to, Final Fantasy XI is going to push that through. You're going to wait 1. And then you're going to get to the second line. Final Fantasy XI is like, okay, I'm on line 2 now. Alright, sneak attack on myself. Alright, let's use the buff. Gearswap's going to catch it right here. And Gearswap's going to be like, hold on, bro. You're trying to use this job ability, sneak attack. It's a legal play. Sneak attack's off of cooldown. But I think that what you would really like to do is put on the gear that augments the sneak attack before you do the sneak attack. So if I have a line of code that says before sneak attack, put on this gear, that's the gear that I'm going to put on really quick. Maybe it's tank gear, maybe it's evasion gear, maybe it's damage gear. I don't know what kind of gear you told it to put on for sneak attack. Maybe you thought that you needed to have your gloves on in this case, so you're telling it to put your gloves on. Okay, great. So you did that. So the sneak attack gets executed. I'll tell you where you fucked up if that last one was you. If you thought you needed to put your gloves on in the Lua file here, I'll tell you where you fucked up. All right? We'll get to that point. So finally, you use the job ability sneak attack. You have the gear on that you told it to put on. Boom. You're at this point. Now, Gearswap's like, okay, I'm engaged. I need to put my engaged set back on. It's high accuracy mode. I need to put my high accuracy mode set on. It's tank mode. I got to put on my tank mode set right here. Okay, so now I'm going to ship the controls away from myself, and I'm going to give it back to Final Fantasy XI. Final Fantasy XI is going to do the wait 1. Okay? At this part right here is where you fucked up. This is right where you fucked up. Because if this is the case, and you put on your sneak attack gloves already, Gearswap has had time to take your sneak attack gloves back off. You're engaged. You're tanking. You're idle. It's changed your gloves, dude. So you're at this point, but you don't have the gloves on anymore. So you still have the buff on your character, but your sneak attack's on cooldown, and you don't have the gloves equipped. So the next attack that you do is going to use up that buff, and the game is not going to check what gear you have on. Gearswap's not even going to check what gear you have on, dude. Nothing gets checked. Nothing gets checked when you actually auto-attack. Nothing gets checked. Unless you have a really stellar written Lua file for your Gearswap, nothing gets checked. So when you use that buff, when that buff expires and gets used up, nothing gets checked to stop that. Nothing gets equipped to augment that at that point. When it's like, oh, you're swinging. Oh, you're about to connect. Oh, you hit him. Oh, I'm taking the buff from you. It's now a sneak attack. I'm taking the sneak attack away. Nothing gets checked. Okay, so you probably didn't have the right gloves on. But if in your Lua file, you wrote some code to prevent that, which is quite complicated, and I'm not going to get into it in this video, but just know that you can write code to prevent this. Then, when you execute sneak attack, it's going to put on whatever gear it needs to, but it's probably going to lock the hands in place until the sneak attack buff is gone. So it's going to look at board state. The Lua file will look at the board state and be like, okay, in this Lua file you say, while I have sneak attack buff active on my character, lock the gloves as the sneak attack gloves. Done! Fucking done! I could do 8 different things, and it doesn't matter because I'm still locking these gloves in place. Every single opportunity I have to check my gear, I'm gonna put these gloves on because they are locked, because this buff is present on my character. I have locked these gloves in place. So sneak attack and trick attack are 2 of probably the only 2 things that Thief has access to that it's relevant up until the point where the buff is lost, what gloves you have on. And since that's the case, you have to code that, or you have to use equip sets very smartly like you saw previously in this video. Alright, so finally we're going to get to line 3, where we actually execute the weapon skill. In this case, Gearswap would actually look at the weapon skill command. It would stop right here after the target has been made, and it would say, okay, I see what you're targeting, I see what you're going to weapon skill with. I would love to make the weapon skill work for you, but before we do that, I'm going to put your weapon skill set on. Okay. Now, before I pass controls back to the game and let you do this, I'm going to just double check really quick if sneak attack buff is present. And if the buff is actually on my character, I'm going to still lock the gloves in place for you. So I've done the weapon skill changes that I needed to do, but I've also locked the gloves in place on top of all that. Just in case you were not paying attention, I'm paying attention for you. And then we get to this point, I give control back. Gearswap's going to give control back to the game. The game is going to actually execute this command. You have your gloves on, always, every single time. If you wrote your code right, you have the gloves on every single time right here. Okay, and that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing that actually works. And then finally, you have a small wait. The game is taking control. They're going to actually wait it out, get to the 4th line. Going to go ahead and stop here again because I'm doing a job ability. I'm going to target something. I'm going to pick a job ability. I'm going to execute the command. I'm stopping here. Gearswap's like, hold up, bro. I got this. You got some command in here that says when you use provoke, you want enmity gear on. So I'm going to go ahead and equip your enmity stuff really quick, and then I'm going to pass controls back to the game. Okay, now I'm going to provoke. Provoke happens. Okay, so game's got control, but remember, after the provoke had happened, I'm in the Gearswap changes to the idle set or the engage set again right here, and then the game has control again, and then we wait again. All right, nothing happens. We get to line 5, and then here it's like, okay, you would like to do another job ability berserk on yourself, so Gearswap's gonna check, consult, see that there is in fact some line of code that has some stuff that it would like to equip when it uses the berserk. It's going to use the berserk, and then it's going to change back to whatever gear you need on, whether it be tanking, attacking, accuracy, evasion, whatever gear that you would like after the job ability. The aftercast stuff gets equipped here, just like all these other ones. And then finally, we get to the wait, and the game is like, okay, all right, I can play again. I'm going to wait 1. All right, so we're going to go, game's going to ship us down to line 6. Game is then going to go Warcry on yourself. But before Warcry gets issued, Gearswap looks at Warcry and says, alright, there's a line of code in your Lua that says when I use Warcry, put this gear on. So I'm going to put this gear on for Warcry. Alright, after I'm done doing the Warcry, put my Aftercast gear on. Alright, whatever that is. Whatever that happens to be, whatever you programmed it to be. Alright, depending on board state, whether you're engaged or not, it might be different things. And then finally, Gearswap's done. And finally, this macro is done. So do you see how long it took me to describe what is happening instantly with the Gearswap program in these 6 lines of code? And do you see why maybe this line has the Assassin's Charge and the Feint, but this line has the Berserk and the Warcry? Because if I'm subbing Warrior, I might as well put them on cooldown. After I'm done doing everything else, I might as well put all my job abilities on cooldown. If I'm subbing Warrior, I might as well, because that's going to benefit me. That's going to benefit my party. Alright, so these last 3 lines are just kind of meh. They're just there because I need to put them on cooldown. I need to use them up. If I use them up, then that makes me a better player. Basically, almost always. Alright? So then the next macro that we have here. This is another macro that keeps in mind your ability to use Gearswap in this game. So basically this is the Trick Attack Rudra Storm. So we saw an equivalent before where we have an equip set dedicated specifically for when I'm trying to use Rudra Storm after using Trick Attack. I would equip this equip set, use the Rudra Storm. So you can do it without Gearswap just like all these other ones, but it's its own equip set, and obviously you're limited to 100 on those. So in this case I'm doing 10, 20 different equip sets right here in these 4 lines. Alright, so basically it's like, okay, first line, the game is like, okay, the first command that you gave me is Assassin's Charge on yourself. So we're going to stop here. Gearswap catches the Assassin's Charge command, and it says, okay, I'm going to check the Lua. I found it. There's some code there's some gear that I'd like to equip when I use Assassin's Charge. We're equipping it, and then I'm going to execute the command for you. So the command gets executed, and then Gearswap's like, all right, now that the command's executed, put on my aftercast stuff. Now give the controls back to the game. All right, wait again. Okay, we're waiting. The game's waiting. Line 2. The game's like, all right, that's cool. So now we're here. So we're going to execute this command, and then the Gearswap's going to catch it. Same thing will happen again. Trick attack will get caught. Put on the gear after consulting the Lua file, and then put on the aftercast stuff, and then wait for a second. All right, and then the game, after waiting for a second, goes ahead and issues this command. The Gearswap catches it. This happens again. It's like, all right, Rudra Storm on the target. Well, in this case, Rudra Storm has to check to see if Trick Attack or Sneak Attack are up. And if they are, Rudra Storm has to have a set combine done to it, where the set combination is the weapon skill set for Rudra Storm plus the gloves that are needed for the Trick Attack and or the Sneak Attack, whichever buff is present on my character. Or you can code it to just lock out the gloves and keep those specific gloves on at all times that the buff is present. I don't know how you code these things. You can do it multiple ways, but that's how you would get around that. So you'd always have the gloves on when this finally executes, and then finally, after that's done, you switch into your after weapon skill set, basically, and then you give control to the game. The game says, wait for, okay, now we go to the 4th line. We're going to do a despoil, because we can. Alright, this is going to steal some TP. That's why I have it macroed in. It's kind of cool, because it steals TP. When you have a Master Thief, it's stealing TP for you as well. Alright, so there's a gear swap that you could write that changes your gear for your despoil set, or you could just simply write equip set and then your despoil set, and then use the despoil command, and then after the despoil command you're gonna write another equip set with your your aftercast set, basically. You could do that, but it's a lot more space that's needed to do that without gear swap than with gear swap. You can see here it's really just 2 lines. On this bully, I don't equip any gear, but the gear swap would look to see if the gear needed to be equipped, and if it did, it would equip the gear. But in this particular situation, I don't think there is any way to augment bully. I don't think there's any gear that helps bully. There might be, I don't know for sure, but I don't use any gear to augment bully, so it doesn't really matter. You might have something written in your Lua file to where when you use the bully command that you actually put like immunity gear on or HP gear on or something like this. Some way to help you kind of sculpt the next few seconds of combat in that equip set. So every time you use bully, this is going to happen. If that's what you did, then even in this case, the gear swap will look at the bully command and check to see if there's any gear that you added to the bully command. It's going to put that on for you anyway, and then afterward, it's going to bully, and then after that, go back to whether you're engaged, whether you're tanking, whether you're running, whatever it is, whether you're idling, put that set of gear on at that point, alright? But in this case, even without gear swap, the idea here is the first line is going to always tell the party that I'm using bully, because like we said previously, bully doesn't really have much gear to swap into, but it is important to tell your party you're using it. So there you go. And so that is my bully macro. I think this is the bully macro most people should use. If they have gear that affects the bully command and they're not using gear swap, they would simply move bully T to line 3, and they would put on line 2 the equip set for the bully augmentation. And then on line 4, they would put another equip set with what they'd like to put on after the bully. And that's what they would do. Alright? So here's another line for evisceration. You can see that in this case, it would work whether or not you're kind of using gear swap, because you could uncomment these. If you're not using gear swap, you could just simply uncomment these, and it would basically, since they're commented out, they would serve as a reminder, because you could go like this. You could actually press evisceration. Now in my Mog House, it's not going to use it, but you can see that the echo still happens. So I can still tell that those are commented out, that those are not being used. And since they're not being used, fun fact, this wait 1 at the end is also not being used. Since it's commented out, nothing on that line is being used, including the wait. So that could screw you up on certain things that you need to wait a second before you can do the next line. You would still need to hard code a wait 1 on the next line and then move the evisceration down if you're going to comment stuff out like this. Alright? Just a fun bit of information. Yeah, so what's really happening here is I'm commenting this out. If these were not commented out, the way it would work is it would put on my evasion gear, it would weapon skill evasion, and then it would put on my after evasion gear. which would evisceration gear. My evisceration gear, sorry. So I put on evisceration weapon skill gear, use evisceration, and then put on my aftercast gear. All right. But if you're using Gearswap, you don't need those first 2 lines because they're irrelevant, since the Lua file is going to actually have that stuff in it anyway. So you're going to get to this point, and you're going to say, okay, Gearswap's taking control from me, and it's going to try to put on evisceration gear. Look at the Lua file, find the evisceration command, find that there's a line of code that says if I'm using evisceration, put this gear on. It puts that gear on, and then afterward, it's going to eviscerate, and then after that, it's going to put on aftercast gear, and then it's going to give control back to the game, and then it's going to wait 1, and then it's going to give me a pointless echo after that. And that's what this macro does. And then the shark bite is kind of the same thing. Kind of the same thing going on here. It looks like this is not echoed out. I don't really think it's relevant. If you equip a set of gear, the next thing that you do in the game, if you're using Gearswap, is going to change your gear anyway. So this actually changing into this set is very rarely ever going to be relevant. So it doesn't really have to be echoed out, you guys. I guess it doesn't really matter. But basically the same thing. You have a pre-shark bite gear set, you have the shark bite weapon skill, and then you have a post shark bite gear set, and that's basically it. Same sort of thing happens with Gearswap. Alien Edge is the same thing. You have a set that actually augments Alien Edge damage. It's magic attack, so you would want magic attack bonus on that, just a fun note. And then you have the Alien Edge, and then the Aftercast equip set that you would like to change into. And so Gearswap's going to look at this and be like, okay, ignore the first line. Okay, stop the game here and take the Alien Edge, look at the Lua file, find the gear that you need on for that, put it on, use the Alien Edge, put your Aftercast gear on, and then give the controls back, and then wait, it's going to happen, and then this is going to happen, alright? And Gearswap just doesn't really care about this line. It's just like, whatever. I'm just going to change into another equip set anyway, the next thing that you try to do, so I'm not worried that the game put this on. The Gearswap is not tilted at this point, you guys. It's a program. It doesn't get tilted, okay? So I'm a little tilted having looked at it. But anyway, so for the shark bite, we have shark bite. You have the equip set for shark bite, and then you have the weapon skill for shark bite, and then you have the post weapon skill for shark bite. All right, same thing. Gearswap goes through and does the same sort of thing that it did in all the other ones. And on this other line, this is for like if you're opening and closing a weapon skill, just as an example, a little thing that I thought was interesting. So you have this opening a weapon skill, you're eviscerating into Rudra Storm. So if you use evisceration into Rudra Storm, that's a weapon skill chain that you can do in the game. So basically the way that this works is it's like, okay, I'm going to Assassin's Charge, and I'm going to Feint, and I'm going to Trick Attack, and that's going to put debuffs on the mob to make sure that the Rudra Storm does the most damage it can, and that it's more accurate than it should be, alright? So this first weapon skill that happens is going to really fuck up the target's evasion with the Feint effect. I believe that actually nerfs its evasion a little bit. It's also going to steal TP back from it 1 second later, and then allow me to solo skill chain because I stealed TP at this point. So that's basically what's going to happen, alright? The Assassin's Charge being a triple attack means that they're going to get more TP off of it, pretty sure. And so the despoil is going to be more relevant here on this line. That was my thought process when I made this, and it works pretty nice actually. And then in the last part, it's like the rest of that macro, and it's like basically at this point we've already despoiled. We're going to bully the monster. We're going to sneak attack from the front. All right. You might notice that there's a thunder shot here. That's just tech. That's just tech, you guys. Don't even look at that. That's not important. Don't look at that. That's not important. We'll talk about it when we get there. You're gonna have your mind blown. Prepare to have your mind blown. Alright, so let's just talk about this macro really quick, and then I'll move on to my Paladin macros, and then we'll wrap the video up there. Okay, so in this case, I'm starting with Assassin's Charge. Alright, so obviously whether or not you're using Gearswap, if you're using Gearswap, when you use this command, same thing is going to happen. I've already told you how Gearswap would interact with macros, so you should know whether or not you're using it, what's happening from line to line in this case. Like in this case, Assassin's Charge is putting Assassin's Charge gear on, and then afterward you're putting Aftercast gear on, then you're waiting a second, then you're putting Feint gear on, then you're waiting a second, then you're putting Trick Attack gear on, then you're waiting a second, then you're putting Evisceration gear on. You see what I'm saying? So that's what's happening under the shell if you're using Gearswap in this macro. Okay, so you get finished with this first line, you have the Assassin's Charge buff on yourself, so your character's buffs are +1, alright? And then you wait, and then you have the Feint on yourself, and then wait 1. Now, since you're waiting 1 in between these, and remember, if you do it correctly, the delays are refreshed in between attacks. So after you use Assassin's Charge, you're put back on your regular delay timer, which means you can't instantly attack, which means this wait 1 doesn't matter. This wait 1 usually will not result in you attacking preemptively before the evisceration. It's not, because what's going to happen is you're going to wait that second. If you had your timing right, you're going to interrupt your delay again and reset your delay again by using the feint job ability right here. So when you use this job ability, it resets the attack delay on your dagger, so you just don't get to attack again. So Assassin's Charge, wait, you're waiting, nothing happens. Feint interrupts your attack again. Interrupts your attack again if it's done properly. And then you're put back on a delay, so you're still not attacking. You're still not attacking. You still have Assassin's Charge on your character. Now you've +1'd your buff again, so you have +2 buffs on your character. You have feint on your character now. Alright, so now you have Assassin's Charge and feint. And the next attack you're going to do is going to use up both of those. Alright, you're waiting 1. So you're getting ready to attack. You wait the 1 before you have time to attack again. Before your delay is finished on your attack phase, you use this weapon skill. Interrupts your delay again. Interrupts your delay again, but it counts as an attack. So it's going to use those first 2 buffs. It's going to use up the feint and the Assassin's Charge. If it was done correctly, this will work every single time. Alright, so weapon skill, trick attack, target. And remember, this works best right after your first attack phase, when you have the maximum amount of delay left between your attack phases. That's when you're going to want to do all this stuff. So you wait for your auto attack, and then you do this. You press this button, and then after your auto attack's done, you press this button, and then you run all this stuff through, and you have enough delay left over before your next attack phase to where you don't attack preemptively on your second attack. You just simply wait it out, and then you use the trick attack evisceration. Every single time this is going to work. This gives you enough time in between all of these job abilities to kind of wiggle your character in position, kind of like what you see me doing right here. 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Okay, I'm in position. You see what I'm saying? So it gives you enough time to actually move into position, and then finally you eviscerate. And then finally those buffs are gone. You're -2 on your buffs, but your evisceration has landed. So after that, you're waiting again. You use the despoil. Obviously, despoil is somewhere in your Lua file if you use Gearswap, so you would put your equip set on for your despoil and get the most out of your despoil right here. And then you would put on your aftercast set, whether it be tank, weapon skill, tank, accuracy, evasion, whatever set you have it programmed to actually use after you use a job ability. Is depending on board state. If you're engaged, it's going to put on your engaged stuff. If you're not, it's going to put on your idle stuff. And then we're going to get to this point where now simply the macro is executing this line right here, and this line basically tells the console to actually do a Gearswap command, just like we showed before. It's the equivalent of writing this //GSC C5. I think it is case sensitive. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's case sensitive. Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure it's case sensitive on all this stuff. Alright, so basically that's the command that you're writing, and in this line of the macro, it's getting executed, and it's basically going to do that. It's going to change to a set of gear for you, whatever set mode that you need it to change to. So obviously you need to think about what that's going to be and then program it right here if that's the case. So this is going to basically be the idle set that you have for the time being if you type in this command at this point. That's basically what's happening. And this is probably like a store TP set or a regain set or something that would help me gain TP. Anything that would help me gain TP, because I've opened a weapon skill, so now I need 1000 TP again. Alright, so now we're going to go to the next part of the macro. This is going to close the macro, the skill chain that we're trying to do. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to bully the target here. We're going to bully the target right here. That's going to give us a little bit more time to gain some attack phases and gain some TP before we have to close, because we're still within the window. If we've timed it right, we still have enough time left in the window to actually do a solo whatever skill chain this is. I don't remember. I think it's distortion. I could be wrong. But whatever Rudra Storm is closing, evisceration into Rudra Storm, whatever that closes, that's the skill chain we're going to be doing here. And basically, I think it is darkness, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, pretty sure it's darkness. But whatever it is, we get to this line too. So the target is bullied at this point, right? Do you guys know what a Thundershot is? I'll tell you really quick. A Thundershot is a Corsair ability, and you can only really do it if you're subbing Corsair and you have a gun in your main hand. There are guns that you can equip on Thief. So as Thief subbing Corsair, you can do this. You can go, okay, open a skill chain, okay, Despoil, take some TP back, not quite getting there, okay, use my shot, use my quick draw effect, use my thunder shot. My thunder shot gives me TP, you guys, instant speed plus TP, based on the store TP gear that I have equipped when I do it. It's based on store TP, and it's based on magic attack bonus. Those are the augmenting factors of this ability. So if you want more damage on your thunder shot, you need to make sure that you told your Gearswap that in your Lua file, when you do a thunder shot, any Corsair ability that you put on your magic attack bonus gear, if you don't care about damage, but you care about getting TP off of it, then you need to make sure that in your Lua you wrote that you need to put on your store TP gear. Or you need to have a mode that you can change between the two modes. You can change from store TP mode to magic attack bonus mode. In that case, the Lua file will correct itself as it goes through. Alright, Gearswap will notice these sorts of things. If you have a mode set on this sort of thing, you can just toggle between magic attack and store TP modes, then that will be perfect. A lot of people don't know that, but coming from a mythic Corsair, I know all there is to know about shots, and I know that some cases you're going to want magic attack bonus, and some cases you're going to want store TP. Me personally, most of the time I'd like store TP, so I can just get the TP needed to weapon skill again, and that helps my DPS out a lot, so I could just press the thunder shot and get the TP back, press the eye shot, get the TP back. That's what I like to do. I mean, you can do more magic attack bonus, but I don't think it makes much of a difference unless it's really specific content that needs magic attack damage done to it. Then yeah, you could maybe do it that way. So those are just some notes about this. So obviously this line is not going to get executed unless I'm subbing Corsair. If I'm not subbing Corsair and I press this macro, it's going to go bully, wait one again because it fails to do thunder shot, so it's going to wait one again, and then it's going to do sneak attack rudra storm. So either way it's irrelevant, doesn't matter. The way that I have it written, it won't matter what my sub job is. If I have a gun equipped, if my sub job is Corsair and I have the gun equipped and I have the shot ready and the shot is not on cooldown and I have the item in my inventory to do the shot with, which would be some sort of ice card, fire card, thunder card in this case, then yeah, I can do all this and it would work. And the thunder shot would get me a couple hundred TP back, which would get me closer to the 1000 TP necessary to actually weapon skill. And it could actually make a difference in this case. And then I finally do the sneak attack, and then I finally do the rudra storm afterward. If I'm using Gearswap, the sneak attack is going to check to see if the buff is on my character. When it is, it's going to lock the gloves in place. It's going to use the weapon skill with the gloves in place, so I'm going to get the gloves bonus effect when I weapon skill every time. That's going to happen. And then finally, this last line is going to be like, okay, now that I finally finished weapon skilling, I'm going to free everything up, and I'm going to put on this new fresh set of gear that I would like to equip, which basically is the set of gear that I would be probably attacking in, I guess. Something like that. Whatever it is. So there's just another example of how you can kind of implement your Lua file into your macros. Because all of these console GC commands, actually, GC, I think it's supposed to be GS, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's supposed to be GS here. I think it's supposed to be GS. But whatever the case is, doesn't really matter. Just examples of how you could use things. Okay, so that's 2 whole macro palettes of thief stuff, and I've been here for a while talking about thief macros, and I did say this would be a short video, and it's getting to be quite a long video. So I will be really brief on the Paladin macros. I will show you those really quick, and we'll I don't think I need to actually be on Paladin to show you. I just kind of show you just a few different things here, and then we'll wrap up the video there. Alright, so here we go. So here is an assist macro where I'm assisting a member of my party and I'm attacking, and if I don't attack anything due to lag or whatever, like this is for dynamic divergence, so it's quite laggy, so then I'll wait again and I'll attack again. So if you're in a situation where you're laggy, you could just do this trick. Next, we have a tank set. Basically, we're equipping a set of gear that is tanky, and we're going to wait, and then we're going to equip these legs because that set of gear probably had on movement speed legs, and this one didn't. Because you remember, Common Kusis +1 is something I use on Paladin in the leg slot. So if we're tanking and we need to go to tank mode, we put on this set of gear and then we fix the movement speed piece out for the actual tank piece. Next we have Holy Water macro. In case we're doomed, we just press this button. Ideally, you're going to want to equip your holy water set, which would have like purity ring on it and some other stuff to help you with your holy waters. If you're using a gear swap, the Lua file, if it's written in there, will check for you what gear needs to be equipped when you use holy water on yourself, and then you can actually just put that gear on for that and then put on your aftercast stuff. NPC, this is for targeting an NPC. I'm going to target an NPC, I'm going to attack that NPC, I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to flash that NPC. So what this does is it targets, it puts myself in attack mode, and then it flashes the target. That's basically what this does, which would actually be aggroing the target. Because attack T doesn't necessarily aggro the target, it just puts myself in attack mode. Flashing will aggro the target. Hitting them with my dagger will also aggro the target. But if I'm far away and I go this macro, target the target, and then attack the target, and then flash the target, I'm aggroing right here on the flash. Alright? So next line, this is what I wanted to show you, which was pretty clutch with Paladin. If you're playing Paladin and you have a decent greatsword and a decent sword, you can switch between the two with a command like this. Basically, this is my weapon skill switch command, or my weapon switch command, I should say. So basically what happens is, I'm typically playing with a sword and a shield. Typically it's Burgang and Aegis. So the first line of this is going to be the opposite that I normally have on, and that's going to be the Beryllium Sword +1 and the Balarama Grip. Right? So as soon as I press this weapon skill switch, I'm going to switch into this sword, and I'm going to add this grip to my sub slot, okay? And then if I hit this button again, I'm going to switch into this particular stuff. And trust me guys, this works. This works every single time. Sometimes if it's laggy, it'll actually screw up and not put the grip on, or the shield, but in most cases I've never seen the shield not get equipped, but I have seen the grip not get equipped occasionally, depending on lag. But you can just keep spamming the button if you need to. It'll just keep swapping between the two until you're in the right one that you need, and it'll just keep executing the same 4 lines again. So basically, this is what happens. If I have Burgang and Aegis on, this first line is executed, and it says, okay, take off Burgang, put on Beryllium Sword. Alright, at this point we've equipped the Beryllium Sword +1, which actually is a 2-handed sword, so that automatically takes off the shield. So not only has the sword been replaced, but the shield has been unequipped. So then the second line, there's nothing in the sub slot, so it will automatically always put on a grip. Done. So if you do it in this manner, not a problem, you can always do this. After this line, you go to the third line. The third line is like, I would like to put a shield on. Okay, but the problem with that is, guys, when I pressed the button to do this macro, I had the shield on. So it's going to get to that part of the macro, and since this happens so fast, it's going to be like, oh, well, you're trying to equip a sword and a shield, but those were already on when you pressed the button, dude. So why would they get equipped again? Like, why would we equip them again? We're not going to, so we're going to skip them, we're going to completely ignore them, and we're just going to leave you with the sword and the grip every single time. And just in case you guys don't believe me, I'll go ahead and show you this. Fuck it, I'll show you that this works, because you probably don't believe me here. Basically, we have a sword and a shield equipped, alright? Sword and a shield equipped. So I'm going to press the button now. This is a sword and a shield equipped. I'm pressing the button. Now I have a greatsword equipped. Now I have a grip on. Done. It didn't screw up, guys. It did exactly what I wanted it to do. I can press that same button again, and I'll instantly go back into a sword and a shield. Instantly go back into a sword and a shield. So there's your proof that it works. It's a really, really smartly written macro that not very many people probably do stuff like that, but if you think like this, you can come up with a whole bunch of different designs of legitimate vanilla client macros that you can just simply do that are extremely useful in pretty much any content you could imagine. Like, this is extremely useful, being able to switch into a shield really quick at any point, and being able to switch into a DPS sword really quick at any point. Like, that's really, really good. So you can do a whole bunch of different ways. This is what I use for my greatsword, so eventually this is going to say Khalidbog on the first line. When the Khalidbog's 119, it's going to say Khalidbog instead of Beryllium Sword +1, and I'm going to sell that, and this is still going to work. And I could just switch back and forth between the two. So if I have the greatsword on, obviously those lines are ignored, and I just go in and switch into whatever's not on, which is the other two. Brilliant. Fucking brilliant. Alright? So that's that macro. Armor switch. Now this is one that's actually written with with Gearswap in mind. So what this does is basically this is like I'm talking to Gearswap and I'm going to switch between several different sets of equip sets that I have. So this is a toggle. What this does is when you press the same button, the armor switch button, you use one macro and it does multiple different things. Whatever the toggle is on the C10 command in the Lua file. You write the Lua file, you name it something, in this case C10, and what's going to happen is when you press the button, it's going to actually toggle between several different sets of armor that you have listed for it to toggle between. And that could be your high accuracy set, your low accuracy set, your medium accuracy set. That could be your tank set, your physical, your evasion, your HP set. That could be any number of different equip sets. What I personally like to use the armor toggle for, because it's quite easy to write one or two of those in your Lua. You could write multiple, but I wouldn't recommend it. It could get confusing. What I personally like to use mine for is I like to cycle between engaged PDT minus, engaged MDT minus, and engaged HP plus. Those are the three modes that I like to cycle between in my armor swap. So if I were to swap between three different types of armor, it would be those particular three. It would be the engaged set that I plan on having equipped while I'm engaged for physical damage taken minus. If I press that same button again, it's going to then move from the physical damage taken minus engaged set into the magical damage taken minus engaged set. It's going to have that equipped. If I press the same button again, it's going to simply put on all of my HP gear. Everything that has the most HP, I have a set that has all that determined, and it's written in the Lua. And basically what that's going to do is that's going to equip all the HP stuff in that slot, and the same macro is going to allow me to switch from my PDT, my MDT, into my HP plus. That's particularly useful if the monster is doing something like 10,000 needles or something like that. If he starts prepping 10,000 needles, you can press this button, toggle into your HP set or whatever tank set you plan on toggling into, and then you could actually just cure yourself to full, and now you've changed the mode of your engaged. Your engaged set has changed. Your engaged set has changed to whatever mode that you put it in, and so moving forward, you're gonna have that kind of gear equipped no matter what. Every time you're done doing an ability, your Gearswap's gonna be like, okay, you did shield bash. All right. So since you did shield bash, I'm gonna put you on your aftercast stuff. Your aftercast stuff is basically whatever's in the C10, whatever's there, and you can change the mode. So you can change the mode between all those different things. So if you're weakened, for example, every time that you do an ability, you're gonna blink into probably low HP stuff, and you're gonna be weakened status, so you're gonna have very low HP pretty much all the time. But if you're weakened and you have the armor swap with the HP toggle in it, then you could just toggle into the HP set. Now every time you do anything, whether it be protect, whether it be aqua veil, whether it be shell, whether it be shield bash, no matter what, Gearswaps might do its thing to switch into those armors. You could even prevent it from switching into anything if you're weakened. You could write a line of code that says, while weakened, keep HP gear on all the time. You could do that. That's not a problem. That's pretty smart. But if you're geared enough, it doesn't really matter if you have a small dip in HP as long as you get it back. So you would blink into your shield bash set, blink into your protect set, whatever it is, and then do the ability, go into your aftercast set. Now you're in HP mode. Since you're in HP mode, you're going to gain a big chunk of HP on your maximum HP bar. And since you gained that big chunk of HP, you can simply cure yourself to full, or have somebody else cure you to full, and now you're weakened with more HP than anyone else in the party, but you're weakened. But you're fucking weakened still. You're weakened and you still have more HP than everyone in the party. That's because you have that HP set. That's because you were smart and you toggled into it on your armor swap, because you did something like this. So multi-purpose on that one macro, I could switch between any number of different equip sets. I can toggle between them one after another with that sort of logic in the Lua file quite easily. You could see quite quickly that you can easily put more than 6 here. So one button press could do infinite number of armor change for you. You press it again, it's a completely different set. You press it again, it's a completely different set. It even tells you when it switches to whatever particular mode, so you can keep track of it without looking. You can give it a title. You could say, I just switched into my HP set. I just switched into my PDT set. And that's like an echo, so no one else sees it. It doesn't spam chat. But if you would like it to spam chat, you have that option. You could be like, guys, I just switched into my PDT set. Guys, I just switched into my attack damage set. I'm squishy. You could write that in the party chat if you would like to. So it's whatever you'd like to do. There's a TP set in here as well. I think one of these you could program to actually be like a TP set. So maybe it's not a tank set. Maybe I have a TP set, a tank set, and an HP set. Maybe that's what I... personally, I don't think you should go much higher beyond 3, because when you start toggling from 4 to 5 to 6, it's really hard to toggle back to the first one in a pinch. So I think 3 is a perfect number for like the most pieces of swaps that you would make. And unfortunately, if you didn't use Gearswap and you put 3 different equip sets in this one thing, like you saw how I did with this is just 2 different sets of gear, guys. This is a sword and a grip and a sword and a shield. So this is 2 sets of gear. This is not 3 or more. If you start adding more than 2, it's going to get really tricky. Sometimes it's going to be like, okay, I might equip the 3rd set. Sometimes it might not. So it gets really tricky, alright? Just, you're starting to run into, like, the game logic at that point. And I guess we're getting disconnected. So let's wrap it up here. I think I showed you pretty much everything you needed to see as far as macros are concerned for this game. I hope you learned a few things. I'm going to figure out what's going on with my connection and get back to you in the next video. So I'll end it here. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments if I left anything out you would like to see. If I was a little bit too confusing on some things. If maybe you just give me some comments, give me some feedback, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.